Welcome. Today we're going to be taking apart an MSI gaming laptop. This is the Stealth Pro GS63VR-7RF. And to begin, we're just going to need a small flat tool like a spudger, such as this, and also a small Phillips bit. This is a 2.5. So the first thing I'm going to do, since we're going to be disassembling the whole thing, we're just going to take off the little hinge cover here. So we'll get a nice flat tool and we'll just pop that thing up and off. All right, now we can see the bottom side. It appears this case has been opened previously, but just keep in mind that if you punch through that warranty sticker, your warranty is void in case your laptop is still under warranty. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and go around this bottom case and remove the screws. All right, once we have those bottom case screws out, we're going to find the seam between the bottom case and the palm rest, and we're just going to get a flat tool right in that seam up here. This one, since it's already been disassembled, it's already pulled up in one corner. You may need to use your flat tool or spudger and kind of work it around to pop those out, but lucky me, this one has already been popped off once, so it's just going to come off real easy. And once you take that bottom case off, you'll have access to the insides. Alright, so it looks like our battery connector is just a straight pull-out type. And what is holding that in? So this battery, it's possibly adhered in there. Let's get this tape out of the way. So the battery feels like it's held on by some pretty strong adhesive, so we're gonna work on working this battery out and then we can continue. Okay, so the adhesive, it looks like it's just here on the bottom, a little bit on the side here. So just gently work up that battery until you can feel that adhesive starting to pull up, and then it should release. And then we can go ahead and pull that connector straight out of the motherboard. And it always helps to give it a little wiggle as well. So that is how you remove the battery. Alright, so we'll finish removing some of this tape and we'll go ahead and release the hard drive. So with this type of connector, you're just going to flip up with your fingernail and then pull that ribbon out. The hard drive is not held in by any screws in this case, so just pull it up and out of the little caddy area and then you can pull the connector straight off the hard drive. Alright, so we'll go ahead and flip it over. And the Wi-Fi card also held on by tape. So tape is covering most of the connectors. We're just going to go ahead and remove all of it. And that will help us take off the rest of the components. Alright, so I'm going to take off the little in-out board here first. So just remove the couple screws, and then removing this board will make it a little bit easier to take that Wi-Fi card off. And for the Wi-Fi card, it's just one Phillips screw. And we're just gonna pull those antennas straight up and off of the little leads on the card. And then to remove it, you're gonna need to lift it up a little bit on one end and pull with your finger. And that will allow you to remove the Wi-Fi card. All right, now we'll go ahead and since the motherboard is here on top, it looks like the motherboard has to be removed for upgrading your SSD or your RAM card. So in this step, we're gonna go ahead and just start removing all of the cables that are plugged into the motherboard. And most of these connectors are just the, they flip up the little retainer there and you can pull out the ribbon. And it's always a good idea to flip it back down so it gives it less chance of being broken. So we'll just methodically go along and release all of the little ribbons. Alright, that looks pretty good. Okay, so what we're going to do is remove the motherboard and the fans all together as an assembly. And I'm assuming as soon as we start removing this motherboard and flip it over, we're going to see the RAM and the SSD on the other side, which is not the best upgrade, upgradable ease of upgrade, I would say. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove the screws. Okay, so it looks like we got all the screws. We'll just give it one last check and make sure. Looks like there's one more screw here for the fan. We're going to need to remove that since we'll be taking it off at the same time as the motherboard. Alright, so the easiest way to do this is to give it a little wiggle, and that will kind of give you an indication if you've got all these screws out, all the ribbons disconnected, without really tugging on them. And also the ports for the HDMI and USB stick through the palm rest assembly a little bit, so we're going to be lifting from the side that is not sticking out through the case, and we're going to pull it slightly back out so that those ports can be pulled out of the case. It looks like there's one more cable here for the pram battery. So we'll go ahead and release that for now. One more for the speaker. And then the pram battery, we're going to go ahead and unstick and plug back into the motherboard. But I want to show you the bottom side. Of course, you got your SSD, your RAM, so if you need to upgrade, just be prepared to remove that motherboard. And the pram battery is just some pretty strong adhesive. So we'll pull that up and we'll go ahead and reinstall that on the motherboard. Alright, so we'll slide the palm rest out of the way for now, and let's remove the pieces on the motherboard. So for the RAM, we're just going to spread the little retainer bars, and we can remove the RAM sticks. The SSD looks just like one screw. We'll remove that screw, we'll flip up, and we just pull it out of the little slot. And lastly, the fan assembly. Got a little bit more tape, so we're going to remove that. Just make sure we don't have any screws hiding under the little pads here. And then we can go ahead and remove the fan connectors from the motherboard. So it definitely helps to kind of wiggle back and forth as you're pulling, and that'll help get that connector out of there without too much trouble. All right, so we got the fans disconnected. Now all we have to do is remove the screws for the heatsink. It doesn't matter the order that you take them off, but if you're gonna reinstall the fan assembly with new thermal paste, you're gonna wanna tighten these screws in the order that's stamped on the heatsink tabs here. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's kind of a crosshatch pattern so that you tighten down that thermal paste evenly and it doesn't just squirt out one side. But as far as removing it, it does not matter. Okay, so we've got the screws loosened or removed. So now we can go ahead and wiggle the heatsink assembly off. This step, it's best to work slowly and just use your fingernails if possible. That way you're not kind of scraping the motherboard with any kind of tool. And just lift up on one end and just kind of wiggle it back and forth. We're basically trying to overcome the adherence of the thermal paste in this step and the little thermal pads that are on the bottom. So it looks like we wiggled it free, and then we can turn it over and you can see the copious amount of thermal paste. The older it gets, the harder it sticks, so if you have an older laptop, this step can take a little while, but just keep at it and you'll be able to remove that fan and heatsink assembly. Alright, so back to the palm rest. It looks like the touchpad is possibly removable. I see a few small Phillips head screws here at the top, so once you remove those, you should be able to bend that touchpad back a little bit and then pull it straight out. Alright, we'll go ahead and put the little speaker back where it was. Maybe. Alright, so you got your LED board up here. It's not held in by anything except for a small retainer. The keyboard is not replaceable unless you replace it with the whole palm rest assembly. It's held on with a backing frame that is riveted into the palm rest. So if you need to replace your keyboard, just plan on buying a palm rest assembly and replacing it as a whole. So it looks like it's just an LED board here. We're going to go ahead and remove that. It's just tape. And the Wi-Fi antennas we're going to go ahead and leave with the palm rest, but if you need to remove them, they're just stuck on the other side, and we'll get a better view of that in a second. So we're going to finish removing the USB port board on this side. So let's hit that one screw, and then we got one more connector for the other speaker, and we're just going to pull that free. And there is your audio USB board. It's just one screw and a couple connectors. Alright, so it looks like we are ready to separate the display assembly. One last thing we should take off here is the power button board. It is just held on with adhesive and a small bit of plastic over here, so we'll go ahead and try to work that out. Definitely helps to have a small tool to try to get into these really small areas. So it looks like the power button is got a nice layer of adhesive on the bottom side, or the side that's facing inwards, so we're just going to pry kind of up against that. So there's the power button, and the whole back side is covered in adhesive, so you might need to work with it for a little bit, but it'll definitely come out. Alright, so we are ready to remove the LCD assembly from the palm rest. And to do that, we're just going to go ahead and remove a couple screws on each side and leave one screw in there so we can open up the display. Alright, so looks like one of the hinges or the hinge mounts is stripped out, so this might be kind of a pain. Alright, so from experience I know the LCD assembly has to be opened at about a 90-degree angle to clear the hinges from the palm rest. So we're going to go ahead and remove those last two screws, including the kind of stripped out one here. Okay, so now we can just push the display toward the back of the palm rest, and that will release it so that we can separate the two pieces. So the palm rest is pretty much taken apart. We're going to go ahead and leave that touchpad in place, but as you can see, the Wi-Fi antennas are just kind of stuck on here in the top, and it's just a little bit of adhesive to remove those if you need to remove your Wi-Fi antennas. So the display assembly for the MSIs, if you want to replace your screen, be prepared to have a heat gun and a small tool such as a spudger, and you're just going to go around the seam where the bezel and the back cover meet, and at the same time as you're heating the bezel, you're going to want to try to pry up and pop it off. There's usually a copious amount of adhesive down here, and it's connected to the LCD directly, so you need to work a small tool in as you're pulling up to kind of keep the bezel from yanking off the plastic surrounding of the LCD screen. This one we're going to leave whole, but if you need to replace it, you might consider just buying a whole assembly. It's pretty hard to take these apart without breaking anything, just because the adhesive is strong, and you need to like pop off the plastic retainers at the same time as you're heating and pulling off the bezel. So it's not fun. It's not a real easy task to do. But if you want to just replace your screen, all you have to do is remove this front bezel, and you should have access to just pull that screen out. But like I said, it is held on by some pretty strong adhesive, so I would not try it unless you have a heat gun handy and heat the display all the way around. So that is how you disassemble the MSI Stealth Pro GS63VR 7RF. If this video helped you or you found it informative, please like and subscribe. Thank you.